Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into the deep, literally. You're standing ankle deep in warm, salt-slicked sand at the edge of a cove you definitely didn't mean to stumble into. The moon above is suspiciously full, the tide too still, and there's a kind of glimmer on the horizon that says godly activity. Ahead, enter at your own risk. You squint. There's something moving out on the waves. Not a boat, bigger, moodier. Then it rises. Poseidon himself, tall and gleaming like someone who exfoliates with volcanic ash, crests the surf like an overconfident Broadway star making an entrance. His beard is glossier than it has any right to be. He holds a trident with one hand, and with the other, a clipboard. Yep, clipboard. You, somehow, are now his unwilling production assistant. Turns out, the mighty god of the sea has grown bored. Not angry, not vengeful, just theatrically, cosmically, oppressively bored. And when gods get bored, mortals tend to end up involved in passion projects they never agreed to. Poseidon's latest idea, forming a sea creature choir, not for world peace, not for love. No, he wants a choir that sings his praises every morning and evening, because apparently being worshipped by ancient civilizations wasn't personal enough. And tonight, are you ready for this? Tonight is audition night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Poseidon gestures at a makeshift stage, a haphazard raft of driftwood and seashells, balanced between two rocks. A starfish clings to it for dear life. He paces like a director, mumbling about tone and timbre and oceanic presence. A nearby naiad hands him kelp tea. You try to slink away, but he notices. He always notices. You, he declares, pointing the clipboard at you, will help me evaluate. You resist the urge to ask how a bunch of sea creatures are supposed to sing. Poseidon beams as if expecting applause. You give him a polite nod that says, "Sure, Lord of the Deep. Let's ruin some acoustics." The first to audition. A school of minnows. They swim in synchronized shapes, spelling out Poseidon's name in Greek. Cute, but they can't actually vocalize anything. Poseidon sighs so deeply it causes a minor whirlpool. Then a pufferfish floats up, expands dramatically like it's about to hit a high note, then deflates with a sad wee. You take notes. Strong stage presence, weak breath support. Historically, Poseidon was known not just for earthquakes and sea storms, but for building cities and inspiring sacred hymns sung by his temple priests. Scholars debate whether these songs were more like solemn chants or lively chorales. Either way, tonight's attempts would offend both camps equally. Poseidon waves you over. We need power, passion, something unforgettable. Where are the jellyfish? You're not sure if he's expecting a formal entrance or if they even can hear him. But soon enough, the ocean starts to glow faintly blue. Bioluminescent jellyfish float in, their tendrils trailing like evening gowns at an underwater gala. It's beautiful. For about 3 seconds, then the singing starts. Have you ever heard what happens when a jellyfish tries to imitate a soprano? Imagine someone rubbing two balloons together while humming through a kazoo in a bathtub. Now slow that sound down, layer it tenfold, and add a light electrical buzz. That's the best case scenario. Poseidon's eyes gleam. This is the future of divine music. You glance at the jellyfish. They're undulating passionately, glowing with effort, though none of them have vocal cords. It's unclear whether they're even aware they're performing or just having a seizure in unison. But according to fringe oceanic myths, tales whispered by old mariners and salt-baked drunkards, jellyfish once communicated through song. Not vocal song, mind you, but vibrational pulses that tickled the eardrums of sea gods. Historians still argue whether that counts as a musical form or just a fancy form of marine Wi-Fi. After the number ends or fades, who can tell? Poseidon bursts into applause, flinging droplets everywhere. You write, sound questionable, visuals, oddly majestic. Jury still out on whether it was music or Morse code. Poseidon grins. That's more like it. We'll open the concert with them soft and mysterious, then bring in the percussion. You flinch. If that means what you think it means, you are not ready for crustacean percussionists. Still, jellyfish float off stage. some upside down, one tangled in its own tentacles like a silky spaghetti accident. Poseidon hums an unfamiliar tune, eyes far away, dreaming of underwater ovations. And you're still standing here, clipboard in hand, damp sandals squelching, wondering how many more sea creatures think they're destined for stardom. And if Poseidon asks you to join a duet, you'll fake a shipwreck. You barely have time to dry off the clipboard before the next act scuttles into view, literally. Dozens of crabs, shiny-shelled and brimming with enthusiasm, march across the beach in suspiciously tight formation. They spread out like a well-rehearsed drill team, claws raised high, each pair gleaming in the moonlight as though polished just for tonight. Poseidon claps once. Perfect. Percussion. You glance at your notes, wondering how one evaluates rhythm when the instruments are also the performers. The crabs begin click, 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 clack. Suddenly the tempo escalates. Some start tapping their claws together like maracas. Others slam their shells on rocks, while a few start headbutting the sand for bass. You blink. It's like a tap dance happening in a seafood buffet. Poseidon sways, entranced. You wince as one particularly zealous crab launches into a solo that involves repeatedly smashing a clam against its own back. Somewhere in the background, a seagull starts laughing, or maybe screaming. It's hard to tell with seabirds. For the record, crabs do have natural rhythm. Some species even use claw clicking to communicate, especially during mating rituals. Historians have found ancient mosaics of crab dances, though scholars still argue whether these were depictions of divine rituals or just the ancient version of a crustacean talent show. Poseidon muses as two crabs start spinning like dizzy figure skaters. Needs more harmony. You lean in. They don't have vocal cords. He scoffs. Neither does a harp, and it still sings. You consider arguing, but he's already moved on, pointing toward a suspiciously large crab at the rear of the group. This one has tied bits of kelp to its claws, using them like cymbals. With a wild clack, it smashes them together and does a little hop that flings sand into your eyes. Sand, nature's confetti and permanent souvenir. You taste it for the next 6 sentences. The beat intensifies. Some crabs start fighting over tempo. A turf war breaks out between the left and right flank. One flips another onto its back, and in the confusion, several break rank and scuttle straight toward Poseidon's feet, still clacking like castanets at a crab-themed flamenco show. Excellent energy. Poseidon says, completely unfazed as a crab scales his leg. But we need more sophistication, something elegant. You make a note. Crabs ill-enthusiastic. Risk of percussion. Mutiny. High. Then, just when you think the performance has reached maximum shell-shocked chaos, a tiny hermit crab rolls in late, dragging a bottle cap as a backup drum. It thwacks it with a bit of coral, producing a faint ping that echoes oddly across the rocks. Poseidon tears up. A soloist. There are documented accounts, though not often quoted in academic circles, of certain Mediterranean cults believing in sea creature muses. One theory, largely ignored by serious scholarship, suggests that crabs' rhythms once inspired early temple dances dedicated to Poseidon. Another claims they were simply the only ones who showed up on time. Suddenly, the crabs stop, mid-beat, mid-spin, as if commanded by some ancient click code. They freeze, raise their claws one last time for dramatic effect, and then bow all at once. Poseidon bursts into thunderous applause. He actually causes thunder. You're less impressed. One crab tries to bow again, gets stuck upside down, and needs 2 assistants to help flip him over. Another wanders into the tide and is never seen again. Let's give them the closing act. Poseidon declares, scribbling notes of his own. Strong finish, loud, memorable. You glance at the tide. Memorable is one word for it. Migrainous is another. Still, you have to admit, there's something charming about it all. The enthusiasm, the sheer lack of self-awareness, the way one crab proudly drums a pebble with the toothpick it found in the sand. Poseidon turns to you. We're off to a spectacular start. You smile politely and consider faking an allergic reaction to crustaceans. But there's no time for that now, because behind the crab chorus, another act is already preparing. A line of seahorses sways gently just offshore. Their tails are wrapped in perfect spirals, their eyes soft and glassy, like overworked dancers at their fifth recital of the night. They're not here to drum, they're here to dance. Poseidon gasps, "Ah, the ballet." You feel the headache before the music even begins. The seahorses hover just beneath the water's surface, lined up like chorus girls at a very slow, very underwater audition for Swan Lake. Their little dorsal fins flutter gently, stirring the tide like old silk fans. One sneezes at least, you think it sneezes. It might have just accidentally hiccuped a bubble. Poseidon is already misty-eyed. Look at their poise. You resist the urge to point out they're technically just floating. A ripple runs through the group, and suddenly, they begin their routine. Gracefully, if unsteadily, they bob in a circular pattern, spinning in slow, dreamy arcs. It's ballet. Sort of. If ballet involved creatures shaped like commas and powered by tiny propellers, they twirl, they tip. One of them does a slow somersault and then freezes. Dramatically, you think it might have fainted. Another drifts sideways, bumps into a rock, and casually pretends it meant to do that. The music, if you can call it that, is being hummed by a nearby school of anchovies. You're pretty sure they weren't invited. Their humming is off-key, vaguely wet-sounding, and rhythmically suspicious, like a leaky faucet trying to impersonate a choir. Majestic, Poseidon whispers. You glance down at your notes and write, seahorses appear polite, possibly asleep. One stuck upside down, unclear if symbolic. Historically, seahorses have fascinated people for centuries. Ancient Greeks believed they pulled Poseidon's chariot across the waves, which frankly explains a lot about how erratically he drove it. Some classical art even shows them part fish, part horse, part snake, basically an aquatic mythological smoothie. Historians still argue whether these depictions were symbolic or just wildly misunderstood squid sightings after too much wine. Fringe theories from old sailor journals even claim that seahorses once mimicked human dancers during moonlit rituals, though most of those journals also mention talking dolphins and romantic entanglements with mermaids. So take it all with a fistful of sea salt. The performance continues. A gust of wind kicks up. The tide pulls just slightly. Half the seahorses get caught in a gentle undertow and begin drifting out of formation. Poseidon raises a hand like a conductor trying to rein them back in, but it's no use. 3 of them float straight into a kelp patch and don't return. 2 others start dancing with each other instead of the group, and one begins a solo pirouette so slow it might actually be a nap. You glance sideways at Poseidon. Are they okay? He waves off your concern. They are channeling longing. Longing always drifts. You blink. That one just hit a barnacle. Poseidon smiles proudly. Art isn't safe. There's a quiet beat where you're convinced this ballet is spiraling into disaster. But then miraculously, one seahorse completes a triple spin on purpose, and the others clap their tails together gently in support. It's almost touching, in a soggy, accidental sort of way. And then, it happens. From behind the rocks, a shrimp disco breaks out. No warning, just a sudden eruption of tiny neon-colored shrimp bouncing erratically in synchronized chaos. Apparently, it's a territorial display, or a mating dance, or both. Nature is confusing. The seahorses freeze mid-pose. Then one bravely starts copying the shrimp moves. Poseidon gasps. Fusion genre. You sigh. Unplanned collaboration. Poseidon ignores you. We'll transition straight from ballet to interpretive rave. The mortals will weep. You make a note. Choreography. Unstable. Theme. Unclear. Emotional impact. Confusing, yet oddly sincere. The performance ends with one seahorse gently spinning itself into a spiral of kelp and getting stuck. The rest sort of hover, waiting, possibly for snacks or divine validation. Poseidon applauds like a man who has just seen the future of musical theater. You, meanwhile, just hope none of them are concussed. Then, from the edge of the shore, a sound, a different sound. Not clicking, not humming, it's a voice. Or rather, many voices, and they're singing. You turn. Floating toward you on rocks draped in sea silk are the sirens. Real sirens. Elegant, feathery winged sea women with the kind of faces that could cause traffic accidents in coastal towns. They are not happy. Their voices, soft but stern, cut across the waves like perfume-laced lawsuits. "We heard someone is using our genre," one of them says, her hair swirling unnaturally in the breeze. Poseidon groans. "Here we go." The sirens glide in like they own the tide. Because, technically, they kind of do. They hover just above the water, resting on sea foam like it's velvet. Their hair gleams like freshly oiled mythology. One has a lyre made entirely of pearlescent bones. Another carries a scroll that screams, "Cease and desist," before she even unrolls it. "We demand an audience," the tallest one says, in a voice that could probably sell perfume or cause an ancient shipwreck, maybe both. Poseidon, still glowing from the seahorse rave ballet mashup, sighs dramatically. "Oh, come on." Again, "That genre doesn't even belong to you anymore. It's public domain." The siren crosses her arms. "You said that last century. And yet, every time a fish hums off key near a mortal, we're the ones who get blamed." You try not to make eye contact. Sirens, according to most sources, were originally bird women who later got reassigned to marine duty. Historians still argue whether they were always aquatic or if someone mixed up sailor stories with opera libretto. Fringe interpretations suggest they had scales and feathers, like a bad costume department compromise. "We're not here to sabotage your little choir," the second siren says sweetly. "We just want royalties." Poseidon pinches the bridge of his nose. "From the jellyfish and the crabs," she adds. "They were rhythmically derivative. You're just standing there, clutching the clipboard like it's a flotation device in a lawsuit." One siren slinks closer. "We were thinking, if you let us headline just one verse, something soulful, we'll drop the legal action." Poseidon narrows his eyes. "You'll harmonize. No solos. We don't do background vocals," the siren says, insulted. There's a beat. Then a gust of wind flares Poseidon's hair dramatically. "You're pretty sure he summoned it on purpose." "Then sue me." The sirens stare. He stares back. The sea awkwardly sloshes between them. And then Poseidon claps once. Next act. The sirens flounce off, scandalized but not defeated. One mutters something about contacting Hades' copyright attorney. You scribble, sirens. Lawsuit pending. Possible backup plan. Let them host red carpet. Then, without fanfare, something rises from below. 8 arms, suckers, a whole lot of flair. An octopus emerges from a rocky tide pool, its body pulsing in iridescent flashes of pink and turquoise, like a walking lava lamp with performance anxiety. Behind it, 3 more follow, each one wearing what you can only describe as kelp capes. Poseidon nods approvingly. My conductors have arrived. You stare. They're octopuses. He smiles. Exactly. The largest one swims onto the driftwood raft, lifts all 8 arms, and strikes a pose like a creature born to lead chaos. The music begins courtesy of an awkward remix from the remaining anchovies. Now working with what looks like a jellyfish, they're mine, and the octopuses move. Each arm waggles with purpose. One twirls a tiny baton. Another swirls through the air like a painter on a sugar high. 2 others tangle up mid-swish and get briefly confused, but recover quickly. Pretending it was a planned flourish, you write, coordination, experimental, tempo, emotionally unstable, impact. Mesmerizing in a seaweed-stuck kind of way. Historically, octopuses were never listed in Greek choir lineups, but that might be due to bias. Frankly, ancient texts, like those of Aristotle, mention octopuses as intelligent, moody, and occasionally too clever for their own good. Some fringe theories insist they were once priest oracles in Atlantis, until someone tried to replace them with dolphins for PR reasons. Poseidon leans over. Do you feel the emotion? The anguish in those arms? You look up. One of the octopuses has gotten tangled in its own tentacles and accidentally face-planted into a pile of seashells. Definitely anguish, you reply. Still, it's compelling. Somehow, the colors, the grace, the moment where one octopus suddenly shoots ink straight into the air, like an exclamation mark of frustration. Poseidon claps like a proud stage mom. Another octopus sways gently side to side, spinning a spiral of bubbles, hypnotic and weirdly touching. For a moment, the chaotic splashes become something resembling beauty, like abstract underwater jazz. If jazz also made you slightly seasick, Then, without warning, one octopus accidentally slaps another across the face with a flailing tentacle. A brief pause. Then all four descend into what can only be described as interpretive slapstick. Tentacles tangle, battens are lost, a kelp cape is eaten mid-performance. The ink starts flying. Poseidon jumps up. No, this isn't Medea. You take cover behind a rock as the octopuses flail into a tangled, inky cloud of dignity loss. Eventually, two swim away in embarrassment. One spins in circles like it forgot what it was doing. The last just sinks slowly under a shell, giving up on theater forever. Poseidon groans. They were supposed to be the glue. You sigh, dripping with seawater and ink. They were the glue, until they slipped in it. Poseidon sighs, already flipping to the next name on his clipboard. Fine, we'll pivot. We need vocals. You wait. The ocean rumbles, and from the deep, a whale surfaces, massive, regal, with the saddest eyes you've ever seen. Poseidon grins. Now he knows how to hit a note. The whale rises like a myth in slow motion. One enormous eye peers above the waterline, half-lit in existential regret. His back glistens with barnacles and salt streaks, and every breath from his blowhole sounds like the ocean sighing into a pillow. After a long, disappointing date, Poseidon claps his hands together. Ah, finally, a base. You glance at your clipboard, still damp from the octopus ink, and write, whale, dramatic, possibly depressed. Potential to crush audience with pathos. The whale does not speak right away, he simply hovers, massive and still, his shadow stretching long beneath the moonlight. Then he releases a low, mournful hum deep enough to shake the sand beneath your feet. It's in D minor. Poseidon gasps, that is perfect. You don't disagree. It's beautiful, haunting, even like a lullaby sung by a cathedral that lost its congregation. Then he does it again. Same note, same D minor, and again, and again, and again. Each hum is delivered with the same glacial solemnity, like he's reading a eulogy to a kelp garden. You start to wonder if the whale knows other notes, or if he even wants to be here. You clear your throat. Does he do anything else? Poseidon waves his hand. He feels the music. Why would we rush him? Another hum, D minor, this time louder. Poseidon sways as if at a funeral for optimism. According to marine scholars, whales produce some of the most complex vocalizations in the animal kingdom. Blue whales especially are known for their deep, low-frequency songs that can travel for hundreds of miles. Some ancient coastal communities believed whales carried the memories of drowned sailors, and that their songs were lullabies for lost souls. Fringe theorists go further, insisting whales are cosmic memory banks, and that their D minor fixation is them mourning the fall of Atlantis. Historians still argue whether this is symbolism or just a deeply committed natural melancholy. Regardless, the whale keeps humming. He does not change key. He does not increase tempo. He does not acknowledge your presence. He is the living embodiment of emotional monotony. Poseidon tears up. I want him to sing during the finale, right as the sun rises and the jellyfish spell my name in glowing cursive. You nod slowly, bold, and potentially very, very long. Another D minor hum echoes out over the waves. You make a note, emotionally rich, dangerously hypnotic. We'll need coffee to survive. Then, the whale lifts one barnacled fin and gestures toward a smaller rock where a group of coral sits. Poseidon squints. Oh no, not them. You raise an eyebrow. Them who? The coral? He says, as if saying the name of a cursed sect. They insisted on a part in this, and I said no, because they don't do anything. But it's too late. The coral begin their audition. To describe it as a performance would be generous. They exist. They shimmer faintly under the moonlight, their polyps gently waving with the tide, exuding an energy somewhere between we're busy photosynthesizing and we're here because our agent said it'd be good exposure. You wait for something to happen, and wait, and wait. Poseidon crosses his arms. This is exactly what I said would happen. The coral do not move in any dramatic way. They do not glow in rhythm. One of them seems to sigh, though you're not sure how. Since coral don't have lungs, you might have imagined it. Still, there's a certain passive-aggressive elegance to their stillness, as if they're silently judging everyone who came before them. Poseidon whispers, "They're glaring at me. You see that, right?" You nod solemnly. It's the withering look of an organism that's been here since before Greek mythology even existed. He groans, "They'll want a duet next." You jot down, "Choral ensemble, emotionally withholding. Possible divas. Would sue if they had thumbs." You glance back at the whale. He hums again, yes, still in D minor, and even the choral seem to wilt slightly in acknowledgement. Somewhere behind you, the octopuses begin retangling themselves into a blob of confusion again. You're not sure if this is a musical rehearsal or an elaborate divine prank. Poseidon sighs. "Maybe we bring the choral back in as set dressing." You suggest, what if they just sway in the background? He considers it. They might like that. Feels mysterious. Aloof. Just then, a gust of wind blows over the raft, and a single piece of kelp drapes dramatically across the coral, like a boa at a cabaret. Poseidon snaps his fingers. Perfect. We'll stage them as the silent wisdom section. You nod. Very avant-garde. Very stationary. Another D minor hum rumbles out from the whale. This one's so low it causes a starfish to fall off a rock behind you. Poseidon claps. We're getting somewhere. Now, soloists. We need some flair. You look out over the horizon and notice something peculiar. A group of starfish are slowly, methodically making their way onto the stage. Poseidon beams. Finally, a little sparkle. You grip your clipboard a little tighter. Do they sing? Poseidon shrugs. Let's find out. The starfish arrive with all the energy of overconfident introverts. 5 of them slowly inch their way across the beach stage, their stubby arms wobbling with exaggerated dignity. You can practically hear them thinking, "We were born for this." Poseidon, ever the optimistic producer, leans in with a hopeful gleam in his eye. They've got the look. They're symmetrical. They're iconic. I want them to be my soloists. You glance back at them. They're not moving anymore. And indeed, they're not. The 5 starfish have each taken a fixed position on the driftwood raft and promptly stopped. Completely. Not a wiggle, not a gesture, not a sound. They're resting between verses. Poseidon says, though his voice wavers. You approach cautiously, clipboard in hand. One of them has its center turned ever so slightly upward, like it's dramatically gazing at the moon. The others, just lying there like throw pillows in denial. Historically, starfish or sea stars, if you're trying to flatter them, have been symbols of regeneration and resilience. The Greeks didn't write much poetry about them, but later European maritime folklore considered them lucky, even sacred. Some sailors wore starfish charms to protect against drowning, whether they ever sang, though historians still argue whether that was ever even rumored. Should I poke them? You ask. Poseidon shakes his head. They'll perform when they're ready. You write, starfish, high maintenance, low energy, possibly asleep, possibly protest art. After 10 full seconds of nothing, one of them finally twitches. Slowly, a single arm lifts, trembles slightly, and then slaps down with the force of a wet sponge. Poseidon gasps. Did you see that flourish? You stare. I think it had a cramp. The whale hums again in the background, still deeply committed to his one-note melancholy. The coral shimmered disapprovingly. The jellyfish, ever optimistic, start blinking in Morse code again, which you now suspect means send help. One starfish begins to rotate slightly, dragging itself in a tight, deliberate circle. It takes over a minute. Poseidon nods, mistaking it for choreography. Yes, let them feel the space. You're about to suggest that maybe sea stars just aren't performers, when a gentle rumble stirs the tide, something long, sinuous, electric. Poseidon stands up straight. Ah, right on cue. From the shallows, a shadow slides in a moray eel. Slim, sleek, with the world's worst smile. Its eyes gleam like someone who's definitely been kicked out of a karaoke bar but still came back to perform. Poseidon whispers with awe. Our beatboxer has arrived. The eel slinks onto a rock with effortless confidence and lets out a strange, wet thump. And then, boom, tisk, tisk. Bulbul bulbuluft. It's not terrible. You squint. It's like If someone tried to imitate a drum set using their throat while also swallowing salt water, the eel snaps its jaws, uses the rock as a kick drum, and vibrates its neck in a way that's either highly talented or dangerously unnatural. Poseidon claps in rhythm. Oh, I love this. You blink. Is he beatboxing or having a seizure? Both. Poseidon grins. It's called ecstatic technique. Interestingly, ancient Mediterranean lore does have stories of eels being messengers of chaos. They were seen as slippery, unpredictable, and occasionally linked to underworld omens. A fringe cult from Lesbos once believed moray eels channeled divine rhythms during moon rites. Historians still argue whether these were actual religious ceremonies or just poorly supervised drinking contests. The eel's tempo picks up. A few clams in the background start opening and closing their shells rhythmically uninvited. Of course, like they're getting swept up in the moment. And then, mid-solo. Disaster. The eel, charging with enthusiasm, accidentally slithers across a patch of electric algae. There's a zap. A burst of blue light flashes through the tide pool. The clams snap shut. The starfish don't react at all, of course. The jellyfish blink in rapid distress. And Poseidon. He's laughing. Oh, he is just so unpredictable. You rush over, worried. Is he okay? The eel raises his head with a dazed grin, smoke rising gently from a scale. He flicks his tail and thumps the rock again, letting out a sizzling wub. You note, eel survived electrocution, now more committed to boss drops, possibly enhanced. Poseidon claps. This is exactly what we need danger in our arrangement. You look out at the mess. Inky octopuses tangled in kelp, emotionally stagnant starfish, sulking coral, a lawsuit feeling siren watching from a cliff, and now a half-charged eel trying to remix whale moans into dance beats. It's either the birth of divine music or a full-blown ecological incident. Poseidon sighs happily. Let's keep the eel. Give him a solo. You look down at the clipboard and scribble in large, shaky letters. Morale. Unclear. Energy. Chaotic. Next audition. Clams. Because now, from the edges of the stage, a new sound arises. A low clack. A hiss. A mutinous slam. The clams are coming. And the mussels, they're not happy about it. You hear them before you see them. Clack. Slam. Clack, clack, hiss! Clams begin emerging from the shallows like squat, gritty warriors in a slow-motion musical uprising. Dozens of them shuffle forward, dragging themselves across the beach with tiny foot-like appendages, shell lids creaking open and shut with heavy, deliberate drama. They're not here to blend in. They're here to perform. Poseidon leans forward, hands clasped, practically vibrating with excitement. Ah yes, my harmonic core. You eye the creatures skeptically. Aren't they mostly filter feeders? They're artists, he says, dead serious. The first clam climbs onto the stage. It positions itself dead center, raises its top shell skyward, and slams shut with theatrical flourish. Silence. Then another slam, then a ripple of clicks and clacks from the rest. It's rhythmic, oddly hypnotic. More clams join in, forming percussive chains, each slamming their shells in time with the last, building a kind of clattering cadence that bounces off the rocks like a really judgmental metronome. You jot a note. Clams eel percussion ensemble. Surprisingly moody. Possible anger issues. Then, one brave clam, larger than the others, slides forward for a solo. This clam doesn't slam, it purrs. Its shell opens just wide enough to emit a long, gravelly tone, like someone gently dragging a chair across a wet cave floor. Poseidon places a hand over his heart. That's the note of longing. You squint. That's the note of constipation. Same thing. He whispers. In the background, the eel tries to layer a few beatbox sounds on top of the clam cadence, but the clam glares at him somehow, and the eel respectfully retreats behind a rock. That's when it happens. The mussels arrive. You'd been warned somewhere in Poseidon's footnotes. In a hurried scribble beneath clams, possible divas about the mussels. Sleek, dark-shelled, always brooding, always whispering about artistic purity. They clomp forward in formation, dressed metaphorically in leather jackets, their shells adorned with bits of crushed coral and passive-aggressive barnacles. They don't make a sound yet. They just take up space. A clam near the front lets out a soft click. A mussel responds with a disdainful tiss. Poseidon groans. Oh no, not again. You blink. Is this a rivalry? It's war, he mutters. Apparently, the mussels were originally slated to be the choir's harmony section. But during an early rehearsal, one mussel broke rank and started chanting political slogans about shellfish autonomy. Since then, they've rejected all rehearsal structures and formed their own genre, mollusk punk. The lead mussel, distinguishable only by the scarred barnacle on his back, hurls himself onto the stage and starts slamming his shell violently. Completely offbeat, 3 others join, stomping out their own rhythm with noisy, jarring clacks that immediately clash with the clam ensemble. The clams retaliate by doubling tempo. The mussels scream in friction. Somewhere in the background, the whale moans in eternal D minor. You watch in slow horror as 2 entirely different rhythms battle for sonic dominance. One clam starts hyperventilating. A mussel throws seaweed like a protest banner. The shells shall not be silenced. Someone shouts, possibly the eel. Poseidon is torn. He turns to you, frantic. We can't cut either group. They both bring something primal. You frown. They're about to start flinging sand at each other. I know, he says dreamily. It's so raw. You scribble furiously. Clams equals classical percussionists with inferiority complex. Mussels is anarchist punks. Battle imminent. God enjoying chaos. As the tempo worsens, the starfish slowly inch off stage, one by one. You're unsure if they're protesting or just migrating out of self-preservation. The octopuses, tangled and half asleep, poke their heads out to watch like nosy theater ushers. Then, amid the rising clatter, a soft hum drifts in again. You all freeze. The whale has resumed his eternal D minor loop, except now he layers it with a new sound, a slight vibration, like he's trying to harmonize with the clams and mussels, uniting them under a singular tone. It doesn't work. The mussels hiss. The clams sulk. Someone throws a pebble. You step forward. What if we split the stage? Left for clams, right for mussels. Alternate sets. Poseidon considers this. He twirls his trident, summons a gust of wind, and slams it into the sand. The stage splits down the middle, revealing a tide pool trench between both factions. There, he says triumphantly, battle of the bands, but mythical. You nod. Peace through passive separation. Classic divine solution. The mussels start chanting their anthem again. Something about shell rights and freshwater erasure. The clams close ranks and start slow clapping with dramatic slams. The eel tries to beatbox both rhythms at once and passes out from effort. Poseidon floats a few inches off the sand. Giddy, I think we've found our intermission act. You look around at the exhausted sea creatures, the pulsing coral, the unbothered jellyfish blinking slowly in Morse code again, possibly saying what is happening, and the siren still watching from a rock, sipping what may or may not be wine. And then, from the far reef, a squeaky, high-pitched sound rises. Not rhythm, not melody, just noise. Poseidon goes pale. Oh no, you turn. What now? He points toward the jagged rocks. The sea urchins, he whispers. You hear them before you see them again. A faint scree rises from the reef, like someone dragging a fork across a porcelain plate that's also being haunted. The sound oscillates between a shrill whine and a metallic buzz, and just when you think it's over, it gets louder. Then they appear, the sea urchins, dozens of them, rolling in like spiky tumbleweeds of passive aggression, each adorned with sharpened spines and the kind of prickly aura that says, "We didn't come to be liked." They move with glacial intent, each step radiating silent disdain. Even Poseidon winces. You take a cautious step back. They're smaller than I expected. They make up for it with hostility, Poseidon whispers, clearly traumatized. The lead urchin larger, slightly purple, and radiating more menace than a caffeinated raccoon takes center stage. Then it begins. It emits a screech, not a cute squeak or a polite hum, but a full-throated, sonic blade of a sound that slices through the beach air like divine dental surgery. Other urchins join in, creating a horrifying harmony of scrapes, whines, and high-frequency vibration that causes the eel to shudder and accidentally discharge static into the sand again. Poseidon buries his face in his hands. They said they were experimental. I didn't think they meant industrial screechcore. You scrawl, sea urchins equals sonic weaponry disguised as performers. Potential audience risk, inner ear collapse. Interestingly, urchins don't sing, at least not intentionally. But ancient seafarers once claimed that, under certain moon phases, sea urchins produced whispery tones used to ward off curses. Historians still argue whether this was actual noise, Erdwin, or just proof that sailors shouldn't drink from tide pools. Fringe myths from the Cyclades insist urchins once formed a holy percussion line in Poseidon's court, until one stabbed a dolphin in a creative disagreement and got everyone banned. Tonight, they are not holding back. They spin slowly, grating their spines against coral, each movement a shriek. They drag bits of shell. One climbs on top of a clam and uses its shell like a scratching pad. The clam closes abruptly. The urchin shrieks louder in protest. Poseidon paces. They're supposed to add texture, not trauma. You wince as another urchin emits a pitch so sharp it causes one of the octopuses to ink itself mid-nap. The starfish visibly flinch. The sirens plug their ears. The whale lets out a low, vibrating hum that might be sympathy or might be a desperate cry for the noise to stop. Then one of the mussels tries to heckle them. Get off the stage. You needles with insecurity. The lead urchin rolls threateningly toward him. Poseidon panics. Okay, nope. Backstage with them. Now, with a flick of his trident, the entire urchin cluster is gently but firmly levitated and set back into the tide pools, where their screeching subsides into a disgruntled murmur. You exhale. That could have gone worse. Poseidon wipes his brow. Their last rehearsal cracked a ship hull. You make another note. Do not mic urchins. Ever. Use only for defense. Fancy. Then, from behind you, a shuffle, a quiet, wet plop, and another U-turn. The sea cucumbers are arriving. A small group slinks forward, gelatinous and slow, wearing what appears to be fragments of seagrass like scarves. One wears a broken sand dollar on its side, like a beret. They slide to center stage and just sit there. Poseidon goes pale again. Oh no, not them too. You whisper, they're the ones who protested last time. Right? Yes, he mutters. They staged a hunger strike. But it was hard to tell. You look down. They don't move at all. You lean toward one. Are you guys performing? One of them lets out a slow, deflating sound like a soggy sigh. Another releases a tiny puff of sand. Poseidon groans. They're protesting again. You blink. Against what? Unfair casting, he says flatly. They claim being background slime in the last choir was a form of spiritual erasure. You nod solemnly. Valid? Historically, sea cucumbers have never been associated with music, rhythm, or stage presence. But some rare manuscripts from a forgotten Aegean monastery refer to them as soft guardians of silence. Historians still argue whether that was metaphor or just an insult. Tonight, they've arrived with a message. You realize one has hoisted a small piece of driftwood with charcoal scribbles that read, "Silence is a solo too." Another flops forward, dramatically, possibly fainting, possibly protesting horizontal bias. Poseidon rubs his temples. What do I do with them? You shrug. Give them a silent solo, mid-show. Call it a reflective pause. He pauses. That's not bad. You jot down, sea cucumbers, all those unintentional performance artists. Ideal for intermission. Recommend zero movement. The cucumbers remain completely still. One hiccups. Poseidon steps back. Okay, enough chaos. I need something grounded. Someone who gets music. Someone who knows how to blow the audience away literally. You frown. Wait, you don't mean. From the edge of the reef, a sharp, echoing toot blares through the night. You groan. Triton. Poseidon grins. Triton, my secret weapon. And sure enough, from the mist, a very drowsy demigod stumbles in, holding his conch horn upside down and rubbing his eyes like he just woke up from a century-long nap. Triton squints under the moonlight, blinking like someone who's been awoken from a particularly good nap only to realize he's about to accidentally headline a concert he never agreed to. He's barefoot. He's shirtless. His seaweed sash is tangled, and there's definitely still pillow reef stuck to the side of his face. "Whoa, what time is it?" he mumbles, dragging his enormous conch horn behind him like a forgotten beach prop. Poseidon spreads his arms. "Triton, my son, my star, my emergency finale." Triton groans, "Dad, I told you, I don't do performances anymore. Not since the amphora incident." You lean toward Poseidon. "What was the amphora incident?" He whispers. "He tried to riff during a sunrise overture, broke the harmony grid in 3 provinces. 7 dolphins sued for tinnitus." You nod. "Reasonable." Triton slumps onto the driftwood stage, examining his horn like it personally betrayed him. "What is this even for?" A choir. Poseidon nods proudly. "The ocean's first mythic choir. Voices of the deep. Harmony of the tides. A symphony that will shake Olympus itself." Triton raises an eyebrow. "You've got starfish in your soprano line." Poseidon claps once. "They vibrate with intention." Triton shrugs. "Fine. 1 blast. Then I go back to bed." He lifts the conch horn still upside down and squints towards the sky. The beach falls into a heavy hush. Even the mussels stop bickering. Even the whale pauses mid-D minor. Triton exhales. It's like hearing the Big Bang if it were funneled through a seashell. The sound rolls out in concentric circles of vibration, rattling pebbles and stirring plankton from their naps. The jellyfish blink in sync. The octopuses jolt upright and accidentally tangle again. The coral light up faintly, stunned into temporary cooperation. Poseidon is weeping openly. You feel your kneecaps vibrate slightly out of alignment. You make a note. Triton. Too powerful. Use sparingly. Ideal for awakening sleeping volcanoes or summoning lost ships. The conch horn fades. Triton exhales again. There. Happy. Poseidon's lower lip quivers. That was transcendent. You glance around. Half the clams have fainted. The sea cucumbers appear to be experiencing a spiritual crisis. One is now upside down and humming, which no one can explain. Triton slouches. "All right, I'm out." Poseidon grabs his shoulder. Wait. That resonance, did you hear it?" Triton blinks. "Hear what?" "You harmonized with the planet." For a moment, the tide leaned in. You glance around. "Actually, I think the tide just knocked over a sea urchin." Symbolism. Poseidon shouts. You look at Triton. "Are you really leaving?" He rubs his eyes. "Yeah, the moon's too bright. And I didn't stretch." You nod. "Valid." Poseidon lets him go, reluctantly. "Fine, but I'm naming a movement after you." Triton yawns. "Please don't." And then he disappears back into the mist, leaving only the echo of his horn and the faint, lingering smell of brine and magical exhaustion. You glance at your notes. So far, your lineup consists of jellyfish, visually brilliant, musically vague; crabs, aggressive percussionists with 0 volume control; seahorses, charming, but floaty; sirens, still threatening legal action; octopuses, emotionally unstable choreographers; whale, D minor addict; coral, artistic inaction; starfish, sleepy set dressing; beatboxing eel, now radioactive; clams versus mussels, civil war; sea urchins, sonic trauma; sea cucumbers, radicalized by silence; Triton, possibly a god, definitely a problem. Poseidon claps once. "Excellent. We're nearly ready." You blink. "For what? A concert or an undersea tribunal?" He ignores the sarcasm. It's time to rehearse the finale. You look around at the chaos creatures buzzing, tangled, muttering, and moaning in different keys and try to imagine this ensemble holding a single note together for more than 3 seconds without something exploding. Poseidon raises his trident and announces, "Places, everyone." The mussels jeer, the clams hiss, the coral sheds spores in protest, the whale hums like a church bell under a storm. A jellyfish floats into the wrong section and accidentally stings a crab. The eel starts beatboxing again. An urchin screeches. You write, "Finale may cause gods to question reality, or at least acoustics." Poseidon turns to you, beaming. "Isn't it wonderful?" You nod, dazed. "It's unforgettable." He grins. "Good. Because tonight, we make history." Then he points toward the rising moon. Signals for silence. and whispers. Cue the jellyfish. The moon glows brighter now, casting silver ripples across the tide like someone spilled liquid moonstone on a wrinkled blanket. You grip your clipboard as Poseidon steps dramatically onto a sea glass pedestal and lifts his trident like an overtired symphony conductor with too many lead singers and not nearly enough grace. Cue the jellyfish, he says again, softer this time. And like some strange undersea miracle, they begin. The jellyfish drift in from all sides, their bodies pulsing with blue and lavender light. They form loose circles around the stage, blinking in rhythm or something close to rhythm with their usual wobbling grace. The bioluminescence starts to intensify, spreading across the surface of the water in rippling bursts of color, like a watercolor painting being breathed into life. They don't make a sound. Of course, not really, but there's something. A vibration, a presence. Poseidon beams. They'll start us off in silence. Mystery, intrigue. You raise a skeptical eyebrow. Silence was the cucumber's entire concept. Aren't we overlapping genres? He waves that off. Theirs is a statement. This is an invitation. You write, jellyfish openers, functionally silent, aesthetically impressive, lighting crew MVPs. Just then, the crab percussionists step forward or sideways, really, and begin their clattering rhythm. It starts slow, a gentle click, click, then a clack, then 2 more clicks. Their claws tap in layered syncopation, forming the bones of a beat that almost sounds musical. You glance toward Poseidon. That's not terrible. He nods. I told you they had range. Then the octopuses rise tangled, ink-splotched, and gloriously uncoordinated. They wave their arms in sweeping patterns, conducting air and salt water alike, painting invisible shapes into the wind. Their interpretive movements are chaotic yet strangely intentional, as if they're channeling the emotions of a sea storm that never quite made landfall. The whale hums again. D minor, of course. And then the beatboxing eel slithers onto a tide-slick rock and drops a beat. Bilchk, tisk, biwub, blurtsk. It is, frankly, catchy. The mussels and clams eye each other across the trench. Poseidon split earlier. For one tense moment, you brace for another sonic skirmish, but then, shockingly, one clam taps in sync with the eel. The lead mussel scoffs, then slams his shell to match. It happens. A brief, beautiful detente. Poseidon gasps. They're improvising together. You blink. Are we witnessing a miracle or a diplomatic accident? From the cliffs above, the sirens watch with narrowed eyes. You're still unsure whether they're going to sue, join in, or launch into a jealous ballad. For now, they stay quiet, sipping what is now definitely wine and silently judging the urchins. Speaking of which, the sea urchins roll in from the edges, Poseidon whispers nervously. Please behave. One urchin emits a brief screech. Another rolls back and forth over a textured rock, like a vinyl record made of metal shavings. Somehow, it works. Their high-pitched chaos slots into the background like avant-garde static behind the main beat. One of the octopuses tosses a baton into the air and catches it dramatically, startling a jellyfish into glowing neon pink. The whale moans again. Poseidon raises a finger. That's the signal. Transition to the coral swell. You blink. We have a coral swell. Apparently, yes, because now the coral previously passive-aggressively glowing in the background begin to pulse with synchronized luminescence. Their polyps bloom slightly, like cautious flowers deciding to attend a surprise party they never RSVP'd to. Poseidon whispers. They've accepted the tempo. You write. Choral, ambient mood lighting, accidental background singers, glorified sea chandeliers. Now, the moment builds. The energy swells. Even the starfish twitch into position. One of them may have moved on purpose. The sea cucumbers slide forward so slow, so moist, and lie down at center stage. Silently, they don't move. They don't sing. They simply are. Poseidon places a hand over his heart, the soul of the performance. You try not to laugh. The cucumbers are sleeping. They are witnessing. He pauses, or maybe they died. Either way, they're committed. Suddenly, another long note cuts through the chaos. Triton, who has returned quietly, conch horn at the ready, adds a single, resounding blast. Not quite as intense as before, more of a supportive note this time. Like a retired rock star doing backup vocals for a charity single, it blends with the whale's D minor hum and somehow elevates it. You feel it, that rarest of musical phenomena, goosebumps. Poseidon levitates slightly, his robe fluttering in the ocean breeze. Now, bring it home. The jellyfish pulse bright white. The crabs reach a syncopated crescendo. The eel goes wild. One of the mussels screams a slogan you can't understand but deeply respect. The octopuses form an abstract shape that vaguely resembles the letter O, and all of it, collapses in perfect silence. The final beat lands. The water stills. You blink. Poseidon descends to the sand, beaming. That, he says, was divine. You exhale, looking around at the tangled mess of brilliant, squishy, glowing musicians, half of whom are probably unconscious or spiritually unwell. Then you write, finale, impossible to describe. Probably illegal in 5 countries. Accidentally moving. Poseidon claps you on the back. Still euphoric. I need to go invent whirlpools now. What? I'm inspired, he says. Music's out. Whirlpools are the future. You're too tired to argue. You drop the clipboard. The sea slowly washes over your feet. And for a second, just 1 second, you think you hear a jellyfish sigh. The performance is over. The sand is littered with faintly glowing jellyfish, overturned clams, emotionally drained sea cucumbers, and one crab gently patting its own shell like a congratulatory shoulder rub. Everyone is exhausted, including you. Poseidon, meanwhile, is pacing like a man who just opened a theme park based on a dream he had during a fever. His trident crackles with quiet static. His robe now glitters faintly with applause he seems to be imagining. We did it, he whispers. You nod slowly, glancing around. They survived. Mostly, Poseidon smiles. More than that, they transcended. That wasn't a performance. That was a revelation in the tide. The octopuses are tangled into what might be an abstract thank you wave. The eel is lying flat against a rock, muttering wub wub in his sleep. The whale lets out one final, gentle D minor sigh that vibrates your spleen. And yet, despite everything, something still feels unfinished. Poseidon seems to sense it too. He snaps his fingers. The after party. You blink. What? Every great performance needs a reception, he says. A chance for the cast to unwind. For the gods to mingle. For me to be admired again. You sigh. Please tell me it won't involve shrimp canapes with a pulse. He grins. Don't be silly. It's potluck. Before you can ask what kind of ocean creatures bring snacks, the beach begins to shimmer with new arrivals. Sea turtles in flowing kelp cloaks shuffle onto the shore carrying trays of seaweed tapas. A pair of swordfish with aprons serve mussel mousse on seashell spoons. One octopus from the chorus is now tending bar, mixing something fizzy with cuttlefish ink and the juice of crushed sea grapes. Poseidon hands you a goblet made of polished conch shell. It smells like ocean breeze and regrets. To us, he says, you sip. It tastes like sparkling seawater with a whisper of a betrayal, oddly refreshing. Soon, the performers begin to gather. The jellyfish float by, pulsing more gently now, like soft lanterns drifting across a calm lake. One of them gives you a light nudge, which might be its way of saying thank you. Or you stepped on my cousin. The crabs clack their claws in what can only be described as celebratory jazz. The mussels. They're arguing over who deserves top billing, but they're doing it near the snack table, which counts as progress. A few of the coral glow pink and sway together to a beat only they can feel. One of them sprouts a flower. You write, coral showing post-performance bloom, possibly proud. Possibly photosynthesizing. Poseidon sits cross-legged in the sand, a smug demi-smile on his face. This is the kind of legacy I've always wanted. You look at him, a choir made of electrically unstable fish and litigious singers. He shrugs. It's more honest than marble statues. The sirens finally descend from their rocky overlook, slow and elegant, swirling sea foam like gowns behind them. One of them approaches the octopus bartender and orders something opaque, dangerous, and citrus forward. You overhear another muttering, fine, it was interesting. That's the closest they've ever come to praise. You scribble, sirens, legally appeased, still bitter, may return next season as critics. Suddenly, a ripple moves across the tide, a single golden conch floats in. All eyes turn Poseidon rises. Oh, we're not done. You frown. What now? The audience. He says, the mortals. You look around. There's no one here. He smiles cryptically. Exactly. He raises his trident, and a beam of moonlight focuses on the conch. It glows, begins to vibrate, then sends out a pulse soft, shimmering, spiraling outward into the night sky. You feel the hairs on your arms lift. They'll hear it in their dreams. He says, all over the world. The sea's weird little choir, maybe it'll sound like wind, or echoes in a seashell, or a song they think they forgot. You take a breath. The air is thick with salt and sound and sleep. That's weirdly poetic. You murmur. He nods. You get it. And for a moment, it's peaceful. The choir rests. The waves slow. Triton has fallen asleep again, face first in the sand. Conch horn humming in his dreams. One sea cucumber gently rolls onto its side with the gravity of someone entering their final emotional era. Poseidon turns to you, eyes soft now. It's not about perfection. You nod. It's about the attempt. He claps you on the back. That's the spirit. Now help me with the feedback forms. You groan. The after party begins to fade. The waves reclaim the stage. The shells and sea creatures slowly return to their homes, their reefs, their deep and quiet places. You sit on the sand, clipboard in hand, watching the tide whisper secrets into the shore. Somewhere, faintly, the whale hums once more, still in D minor. Of course, the moon tilts just slightly westward now, as if even the sky is preparing for bed. The beach has emptied, or rather, dissolved back into its usual routines, waves lapping, sand shifting, seaweed gossiping gently with the breeze. You're still on the sand, barefoot, crusted in dried kelp and whatever dignity is left after spending 5 hours managing what may legally qualify as a maritime flash mob. Poseidon is sprawled beside you, staring at the stars. You know, he says, it takes a certain kind of madness to make something beautiful. You nod. Because if that isn't the unofficial slogan of this entire evening, nothing is. The clipboard lies across your lap, pages damp and warped, its ink smudged into abstract art. You flip through the notes. Crabs, thriving. Whale, emotionally consistent. Mussels, unionizing. Sea cucumbers, still silent. Octopuses, need therapy. Triton, unsure if real or myth. Poseidon glances over. What's the final verdict? You shrug. Could be worse. Could be interpretive mime dolphins. He shudders. Don't joke about that. Suddenly, a soft squelch draws at your attention. A lone starfish has returned to the stage. It doesn't move much, just kind of flattens into the center of the sand, radiating quiet determination. Then, it lifts one stubby limb and slaps it back down. Once, twice, clack, clack. You lean in. Poseidon squints. Then, unexpectedly, a crab joins in, adding a soft percussive click. Then a jellyfish floats over, blinking in time. A coral glows gently. One eel, not the original beatboxer, but perhaps a cousin, rises from a rock and adds a low, watery P-E-T. It's not planned. It's not even rehearsed. It just is. You feel something stir in your chest. Not awe, exactly. More like contented confusion. Poseidon whispers, this is the encore. You smirk. No, this is the cool-down lap where everyone limps off stage and pretends they didn't sprain something. He chuckles. You mortals always want closure. The sea doesn't work like that. And he's right, because now the final performers begin their exit, not with bows or applause, but with sleepy, drifting silence. The starfish rolls sideways and gets stuck on a rock. The eel waves a lazy fin. The jellyfish drift up, their glows dimming like nightlights on low battery. The sea returns to its lull. Then, a quiet plink. You look up. One of the coral polyps is still awake. It pulses once, then goes dim. You write, final pulse. Possibly applause. Possibly burp. Poseidon stands, stretches. His trident dissolves into foam because apparently he's done with that aesthetic now. He turns to you, eyes twinkling. You want to do this again tomorrow. You stare at him. I will literally throw myself into a trench. He laughs. Good answer. You pass the test. You blink. What test? He grins, seeing how far a mortal assistant can go before they either go mad or unionize. You raise an eyebrow. And if I had quit halfway through, he shrugs, I'd have promoted the whale. You nod solemnly. Fair. Suddenly, something brushes your ankle. It's a note. A soggy piece of kelp, carefully folded, sealed with a tiny clam clasp. You open it. It reads, "Good vibes. See you next tide." The mussels. You smile. Because of course, they'd leave a note. You stand, brushing sand off your legs, tucking the kelp note under your arm like a strange badge of honor. Poseidon lifts a hand. The sea parts just slightly. A glowing path opening across the foam. You earned a ride back. You pause. Back to what? Exactly. He winks. Wherever you came from before all this got weird. You take one last look around at the sand-scuffed stage. The bioluminescent puddles, the coral still pretending not to care, and the gentle rise and fall of waves that now hum like they've just told the best joke and are waiting for it to land. And you walk into the water, letting it take you, letting it hold you, letting it whisper the echo of a choir that never should have worked, but somehow did. Because sometimes, the unhelpful things, they stick with you. You wake up on a sandbar, or you think it's a sandbar. It's hard to tell. Everything's soft and damp and vaguely moon-scented. The stars above have rearranged themselves into vague sea creature shapes. One of them might be winking or twitching. You sit up slowly. The kelp note from the mussels still stuck to your elbow. Your clipboard rests beside you, soggy but loyal, covered in sleepy scribbles and a few jellyfish tentacle prints. The ocean hums quietly in the distance. No more performances, no more experimental eel solos, just the steady pulse of the tide, like the planet breathing in its sleep. And then, a soft, wet splash. You turn. Poseidon stands knee-deep in the water, holding a small conch shell like it's a Bluetooth speaker of divine gossip. He's smiling again. But this time it's not the dramatic god of the sea grin. It's something smaller, softer, just checking in. He says, "Wanted to make sure you didn't wash up confused and disoriented." Again, you rub your eyes. Where even am I? Intertidal boundary between dream and myth. He says casually, "Very exclusive. Sea cucumbers tried to claim it last year. But we don't talk about that." You glance around. Did everything happen? The choir, the chaos. He nods solemnly. All of it. You survived the most experimental, unsanctioned, accidentally sacred sea performance in Olympian history. You exhale slowly. Great. So what now? Do I write a review? He shrugs. Or not. Maybe just remember it. Let it sink in. Maybe the next time you hear a seashell echo or a wave slap the shore wrong, you'll think, "Hey, that sounds a little like that crab solo with the bottle cap." You smirk. You really think it'll stick with me? Poseidon gestures toward the horizon. Look, you turn and on the water, you see them. Tiny glimmers, faint silhouettes, a jellyfish blinking once before vanishing, a crab claw tapping rhythmically on a shell, a ripple of D minor in the wind, a sea urchin screeching softly into the abyss. It's not loud, it's not showy, but it's there, still performing, still weird, still trying. Poseidon steps back. They'll keep going. Maybe not all together, maybe not every tide. But somewhere in the deep, the sea still sings. You nod. He vanishes with a wink. And the water ripples where he stood, like he was never really there. You lie back on the sand again. The stars rearrange themselves once more, this time into a crab with sunglasses. You chuckle. And finally, you sleep. And in your dreams, the whale sings D minor. Obviously, you're not quite awake. You're not quite asleep either. You're floating in that delicious, heavy-eyed middle space, warm, safe, and slightly sticky with dried salt water and whatever glitter the coral left behind. Somewhere far off, you think you hear applause. No, it's just the tide again, pretending to be an audience. The sea has a sense of humor like that. You roll over slightly, and your hand brushes something smooth and cool. You lift it up, the clipboard, still damp, still full of scribbles, page after page of musical nonsense, divine nonsense, delightful nonsense. And at the top, in Poseidon's handwriting, wavy and unnecessarily swirly, is written, "The first and final mythic marine choir, featuring literally everyone who showed up." You laugh under your breath, then flip to the backs of the last page. There's something new there, a tiny note, scrawled in kelp ink, smeared at the edges. P. If anyone asks, it went perfectly. You grin, even as your eyelids start to fold themselves down again. But something shifts. A current tickles your ankle. The sand rustles beneath your back. You sit up slowly, expecting another last-minute encore or perhaps a surprise siren with unfinished legal business. Instead, it's a message, not a voice, not a word, a feeling, a kind of vibration in your spine, like a very old, very bored idea swimming up from the deep. Because here's the truth. You still haven't heard the sea's last song. The choir may be over, the costumes packed, the kelp boas hung up. But somewhere deep down in some trench nobody dares map, there's a straggler, a forgotten performer, a final note. You glance at the moonlit surface, it glows faintly, and then something small and silver darts beneath it. You blink, then you hear it, a plink, then another, and then fwam. It's not loud. It's not even coherent. It's like if a seashell learned how to whistle while dreaming. But it's there, and it's coming closer. A fish leaps just a small thing, all shine and sparkle, and lands with a flourish, spraying droplets that catch the moonlight like applause. Behind it, more, a school of glittering minnows zipping into shapes across the water, spelling absolutely nothing useful, but doing it with flair. Then a stingray glides through, trailing a ribbon of bioluminescence that shivers across the sea's skin. Then, finally, of course, your old friend the beatboxing eel pops up one last time to drop a farewell brrrr. It's faint, it's wet, it's perfect. Poseidon is nowhere to be seen. But you know, somehow, that this final, ridiculous ripple of music was sanctioned, maybe even encouraged. Because sometimes the most important notes aren't in the overture or the finale. They're in the weird, awkward, unscripted middle, where things wobble and surprise you, where whales refuse to change keys, where starfish never move but always matter, where sea cucumbers protest with silence, and mussels stage revolutions for better lighting. You lean back again, sinking into the sand, the sound fading, your breath slowing. The water laps up gently, no longer a stage, but a lullaby. And with the stars overhead, and the last wet beat still tapping in your ear, you finally let go of the night and sleep, real sleep. You're adrift now, weightless, anchorless, floating on a dream stitched together with jellyfish silk and octopus ink. The ocean is quiet, but not empty. It holds echoes, and you're starting to understand that's what the sea's always been best at. Holding things, songs, secrets, shipwrecks, half-finished lullabies. Forgotten jokes told by clams at low tide. The final performance is long over, or maybe it never really ended. Because the thing no one tells you about divine choirs made of sea creatures is this: the ocean never stops improvising, even in silence. It keeps riffing. One wave bumps into another, and that's percussion. A whale's sigh spirals through coral caverns, and that's harmony. A clam remembers the rhythm of a wave it met last century and clicks in time just for itself. You're lying on the sand dry now, mostly. The stars above pulse like slow applause. The wind hums low and round and familiar. You know you should go. Get up. Head back to the part of your life where things make slightly more sense. But you don't move. Not yet. You close your eyes. You remember the eel's rogue beatboxing, the coral's passive-aggressive stage presence, Triton's explosive one-note comeback, the crab who used a bottle cap as a drum, Poseidon, dramatic and dazzling. And so absolutely sure this mattered. And maybe it did. Maybe there was never going to be an audience. Maybe the sea didn't want one. Maybe it just needed to hear itself make something strange and ridiculous and beautiful. You smile. You're still smiling when you finally drift off. The last note still curling somewhere in your chest. And in your sleep, you hear the whisper, a sound not made for applause. Just for you. Just once. And gone. So now, let yourself go a little heavier. Let your shoulders drop into the pillow like seashells sinking gently to the ocean floor. You've made it through jellyfish symphonies, crab percussion wars, emotionally overwhelmed sea cucumbers, and the eternal hum of a melancholic whale. You've helped Poseidon with his most unhinged idea yet. And somehow, you didn't drown, or cry, or get sued by the sirens. That's a win. Let the tide of that memory recede. Soft and slow, like breath pulling away from a shore. Feel the way the sand shaped itself under your back. The way the stars didn't ask anything of you. The way every weird, unhelpful sea creature showed up anyway. Awkward, loud, sleepy, glorious. Let your mind quiet. You're no longer needed on the clipboard. You don't have to score another soloist. The sea can go on riffing without you for a while. And maybe tomorrow, when someone tells you something doesn't make sense or seems too silly to be beautiful, you'll remember a choir that had no business existing and did anyway. Now melt into the mattress. Drift out with the tide. Let your breath grow deeper, softer. The sea's not done, but you are, for now. And if you ever need to hear it again, just press your ear to a shell. Wait, listen. It's still singing, just for you. Good night.